Okay, we are live, little brother, Nicholas Alexander Karadza.
Little brother, still bench.
You're 5 years younger.
I still bench more than you.
I started when I was 40. It's amazing that if you look at where I'm at and you reverse engineer that.
You used to go to the gym, I remember at one point, because I remember you had a weightlifting belt and stuff. Oh yeah, I think probably
How many times
when
did
you
I
were
go?
at Airedale.
Once?
I don't know, but I remember.
I don't think I ever put that belt on.
But you had it. I remember
somebody probably
gave it.
Somebody probably gave it to me. I don't think I ever put a weightlifting belt on to go to the gym, but maybe I got it. It probably came as a set that we had in our basement that our father purchased.
I do remember that set too. They were sand-filled plastic weights.
Yeah, that I don't think I ever used.
I don't think I ever used something like that.
I did go to the gym a little bit in university before we go on a trip to Mexico. I think I did like some pull-ups on an assisted pull-up machine.
With your belt on?
No, but there was a platform that you would bend your knees and you would go on the platform. I remember those. And you could program it on how much assistance, and I would do pull-ups. That was my prep.
Those are good. Someone taught me that was even good training. Like even if you could do pull-ups, that was a good training. If you could do them nice and slow and controlled that way with
I guess
those.
You could get the negative really good too.
You can get a deeper pull to work on that, because a lot of people can pull to like their chin, but they can't pull down to their middle of their chest or something. Still a good machine.
I don't think I can still pull down to the middle of my chest
because you don't know it's something that like you just don't practice nearly as much, right?
Maybe with an elastic band, a nice juicy green band, which is how I first started doing pull-ups with Rachel. She tied a big elastic band to me and tied it to the bar, and then it was so thick it almost shot me through the roof. Yeah. Like when I pulled up, I was like going to go through. I think I went up to my knees. Scared the living shit out of me. Yeah,
there's no shame though. I remember the first. Once I
think there is some shame though, because I did deadlifts when we first started of 75 pounds and I hurt my back, I think. And you came by me. I remember this first time I'd ever done deadlifts. And I'm like, oh, Nick, I kind of whispered to you because I'm grateful that you brought me to the gym, but they were testing me out. I'm like, oh, Nick, my whole back seized up. And you whispered kind of under your breath. You're like, don't say anything to anybody about that.
No, just around me. You could tell people, just don't tell them while you're with me. No, but I do remember going to the gym once, and there was a sign above the doors like "check your ego here" or something, and it was good because it just changed your perspective. Because I went in, that was when I went to an early CrossFit gym, and because I'd been working out, so I was kind of strong. And so I was like, oh, I figure I can do some of this stuff. And you know, when you see some of these workouts and it's like written down,
it looks so simple.
My first workout, I feel like was wall balls, kettlebell swings, and sit-ups. I think that's what it was. And I see that on the board. I'm like, okay, this seems like, I don't know, seems pretty easy. Like, this seems like no problem.
Sit-ups after doing those wall balls?
Yeah. And it was just like, and I quickly realized, I'm like, oh, I see. You got to check your ego. And it's good. And now you just do it for yourself. Who cares? Who cares if you use one band, 10 bands, no band? Who cares? Just do whatever, you know.
And I think because I didn't go until I was 40, I had no context of how hard you could push yourself. And the CrossFit gyms in that time, 12 years ago, were pushing you pretty hard. The second workout, I threw up in the bushes outside. But I thought that was just normal. So I'm like, oh, like I don't work out. Because I don't work out, this is what happens. Your body's adapting.
They got a bad name early on because it was always like, heavier, faster, just keep going like really all out. And sometimes, that's when people get injured with form and stuff. No, but some people But
I don't regret that. Like, I feel like if it didn't push me that hard, I probably wouldn't have stuck with it. Like, I think I responded to that. I know it got a bad name for it. Yeah. People weren't using proper form.
Well, people were getting injured.
Yeah.
That's where
I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. I guess. Yeah. No, I understand the point. It sounds ridiculous for me to disagree. I just feel like it wasn't. Yeah. I feel like it was overblown.
Maybe. I mean, they did do like an open workout with rebounding box jumps, and a bunch of people tore their Achilles. So that's
bad. That's bad. Yeah. Okay, no doubt that is bad. And I've torn my Achilles, so I understand.
No more rebounding box. I don't think I've ever.
I step down now all the time on box jumps.
Oh, because of your Achilles. I think since you tore your Achilles, I never rebounded a box jumps ever since, because I saw what the rehab was like. And I'm like, I'm not doing this. It's not worth it. It's not worth it for the extra seconds. I don't care. It is not worth it for me.
8 months until I could run again. 8 months.
Yeah. That's why I've never rebounded a box.
I'll never forget at the hospital, the doctor, they, scanned me or whatever. I'm sitting there. The guy just mumbles to himself, the doctor at the hospital here in Oakville. And he just goes, yeah, full tear, point your toe forward not to me, directed to the person who's doing the casting or whatever. Point toe forward, a full cast. I'm like, oh, sorry, excuse me. Like, I have a full tear. He didn't speak to me. He was like 2 feet in front of me. And then he goes, oh, you don't believe, this is what the doctor said to me. He goes, oh, what? You don't believe me? And another doctor happened to be coming by, and he goes, so-and-so, come over here. Feel this on the Achilles. See, full tear. And I was like, okay, dude, like I'm not challenging you.
Yeah, so transactional.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm a human sitting in front of you. This is obviously a major thing for me. Can you kind of break it down a little bit with more ease and maybe a little bit gentler than you just did? Yeah. And then they pointed my toe forward and casted me. Nothing changed, threw me out. And that was on a full tear, but I had 2 strands apparently that were hanging on, so they didn't have to do surgery. So it was a full tear, but I guess the tendon didn't roll up is the way they were explaining it to me. Mm-hmm. So they just pointed my toe, and because those 2 strands were hanging on, it was considered a full tear, but they didn't have to operate.
And does private healthcare fix that? Like, does the ability to have private clinics as well as public fix that?
Absolutely.
Right. But the downside, so the argument against it is that then there's this 2 standards of care, and people that can afford it are getting better care than people that can't. Right.
Yeah, that's the argument, that the lower tier, the public tier, gets neglected, which the argument is that government is so bad at bureaucracy that the overload of taxes that they do get will just be mismanaged. But instead of saying it's the government's fault, it's the private sector's fault for offering another solution, operating freely and operating another solution.
And the system's messed up. I mean, I don't think very many people are going to argue that the healthcare system is in great shape and everything's humming along perfectly. So the system's messed up. They need more money. Recently, they came out. They're going to increase the capital gains tax. Actually, it just got passed finally this week.
Right, that's going to fix everything.
Because they used it as a political ploy, of course, to make the conservatives decide where they want to vote. And
wait, so it did get passed? I don't even know.
It did. I think it was yesterday or...
Oh, it did?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
It got passed.
I was at Aiden's graduation. I'm out of the loop.
So it separated it from the budget vote, right? So it got passed. And
it gets implemented immediately?
This month.
Oh, I thought
this month. Isn't it this month?
Oh, okay. Okay.
No, I'm pretty sure it's like next week.
Okay.
So here's the thing that blows when this argument about the tax there's 2 things that come up, right? But the initial argument's like, well, good. And this is the way that's being presented is like, we need to live in a society where everyone's paying their fair, we can't live in this 2-tier world where something
their fair share.
Money.
You can say it.
No, I couldn't even bring myself to do it. but it's very, the speech that Freeland gave about it seemed very divisive. I got to be honest. Like it seemed pretty, like, it seemed like really bad
we can't have people making money. Nobody can make money. Everybody deserves their fair share.
But here's the low-hanging fruit in an argument, but there's another argument to this in a second. But the low-hanging fruit is that, I could kind of come to terms with it in my head if I thought the money was going to go to build hospitals and improve our healthcare or build roads or get a better running transit system in Toronto, like whatever it was, to like infrastructure that mattered in this country, or invest into our energy sector because, we have a lot of resources.
Well, it will. It'll just be a tiny percentage of every dollar.
Oh, yeah.
But yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's, yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. If you're on that argument, but like, you got to see a difference. But I don't even think it will. I think it's such a load of BS. No, because nothing makes it, man. Yeah. There's just like no changes, and then like it just doesn't make any sense to me. So that's the argument against it. If they said, okay, look, we're going to take this money, here's where we're putting it, and we're putting it all into this account, and here's where this money's going on this account, so people could see. Oh. Then you could have it be like, oh my God, okay, you know what?
You just described savings, by the way. Saving money, Nick.
No, but even if it wasn't local. Like even if it, so we live Southern Ontario, right? But even if it wasn't local, but it was something good for the country or good for a community elsewhere, like, okay, that makes sense.
But the feds aren't, it's Ontario, it's the provincial level that does medical anyway. So feds on
feds, energy infrastructure, like whatever it is.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, it's your point.
Like it just doesn't, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. So we're never basically.
So that's
I just wonder for the point of democracy in the entire West, where it's grown so big, so fat, so many regulations, that there has to be like a red button that's pushed every once in a while that just like blows up 80% of the regulations arbitrarily and blows up 50% of the government jobs and gets rid of it all just as a cleaning of the house. Otherwise, like, when's the last time the government looked at all the regulations in any sector and just said, okay, like, do we even need half of these anymore? Instead, it's just more regulation, more regulation. What about the different jobs that are put into the government? Every 10 years, let's call it, there should be a cleaning up of the house where like every government job is reevaluated, and just, if you don't get voted yes, you're gone. Sounds kind of harsh, but no, but otherwise you just have this bloat that grows bigger and bigger. Twitter is a perfect example. Twitter is a perfect example. Elon got rid of like don't hold me to this number, but like 6,600 employees or something. And everybody was like, Twitter's going to die.
Wasn't it over 3/4 of the workforce? It was about,
I don't know, but it was thousands of jobs.
Number,
And Twitter just kept operating. So like all those people, like what were they doing? And you can't tell me if Twitter had that, which was a private enterprise, that the government doesn't have it 10x or 100x worse. The government in a democratic country has to have this period of time where everything is like cleansed. Otherwise, it's just like you load on and you load on.
And this isn't a liberal conservative.
No,
this is just government.
I think it's just democracy.
Yeah.
I think democracy doesn't work well after so many years. It gets too heavy. It gets too top heavy. Like how many government jobs have been added in this country since the pandemic? I think you sent me the chart. It's like
it's ridiculous.
80% or something of government, of all jobs are like public sector jobs.
Well, the only reason our unemployment number doesn't look terrible is because it's all government jobs.
Great. So if the government just hires more people, paid for taxes, we'll have great unemployment paid for by a tax base that's feeding itself. Like it doesn't.
Well, look at our per capita. Like the GDP per capita in Canada is just it's compared to the US, which has tracked for a long period of time. It's separated in a very negative way, right? Where the US has continued to grow and we've just kind of flatlined and now tapering off like downwards.
And this capital gains tax, like it didn't really, honestly, it didn't bug me because I think I kind of expected it. I'm like, the system is just more tax and more tax. It's why I don't have any RRSPs. Like I've been telling people for years. I literally have been telling people since I think 2008 that RRSPs to me are a scam because it's a honeypot where your dollars are going to be inflated away. Or even if they grow tax-free in there, and you can make the argument to me, well, Tom, my money's growing tax-free. When you get to take them out, like I'm 50, so people my age, let's call it another 15 years or so, I don't know what you're going to be taking out. Like it better have outpaced the debasement and the tax rate. Otherwise, you're behind. And I just don't want that risk. I think it bothered me the most when we started this business and I had some RRSPs and I had to take it out. And the person on the phone at the bank said, well, you're taking out $10,000. We're withholding like 30% tax. I'm like, wait a second. Now, sorry, my income is going to be really low this year. I just quit my job. I need all that money. And they're like, well, no, we're withholding the tax. And then I said, well, how little can I take out to withhold less? And they're like, 5,000 is the lowest amount. It's 20%. I'm like, okay, I'll take out 5,000. And I called every day taking out 5,000 for a few days instead of withholding 30%. But you have to kind of like beg for your own money. There's another question I had for you just on stocks in general, because I know someone listening to that, I wanted to pissed off for sure.
Okay, go. Because I want to come back to
the stock market. Like, is the stock market really, like, if you think about it, if there's another crisis, is the stock market, anything you own in the stock market, because you don't custody the shares yourself? I think Bitcoin made me understand this. Bitcoin, you custody directly. Stocks, you don't custody directly. Like, you're not calling TD and saying, can I get my Apple and Disney shares sent to me in the mail or however the heck they're physically sent? So, like, you invest in Apple and Disney and all this stuff, and it goes up and up and up and up. But then there's a crisis, and you want that value. So you're like, oh gosh, there's a financial crisis. I want to sell. But the crisis is so big that it affects the banks. Are the banks going to then just sell your shares? Or if there's a banking crisis, do they all freeze for a moment and say, whoa, we had a big financial crisis here. We got to print a lot of money to solve this. And in the 5 days that the banks are closed while they solve this financial crisis and print a whole shit ton of money, when you then sell your Apple shares, is the purchasing power that you get out in that moment in dollar terms, what is it really worth to you?
Yeah,
you really just have price exposure to Apple and Disney. You're not owning the shares in your TD trading or your RBC or BMO. You're not really owning anything. You're just getting price exposure. If you really, really needed exposure to that asset, do you have it?
Well, so no, from the dollar value of it, like you're talking
from
about.
The dollar value, you get exposure.
You do own a percentage of the company. So you do own the
correct, as long as you're happy at seeing it represented on a digital screen on your computer.
Yeah.
The moment you're like, holy shit, the Canadian banking system's shitting the bed. I want my Disney shares. You're just going to get the Canadian dollar price of whatever it is at that moment.
If they sell them out. But I'm
just saying there's a banking crisis. Forget Disney. I'm not saying Disney or Apple have a problem. I'm saying there's a Canadian.
Yeah, but you're looking at the asset as the money. The asset that you're actually owned from the share is the company.
Correct.
So it's two different things. So you're like, well, I want to sell. So, but now you're talking about
no, or no, forget it. I don't want to sell. Give me my Apple shares. You're not getting them. That's my point. You're saying I don't want to sell.
Yeah, like
but TD's going, let's just paint the worst case scenario. TD, RBC, all the Canadian banks are going down, or they're going to shut for 10 days. You're like, that's fine. Excuse me, sir. Can you please give me my Apple share?
Oh, because you're saying because it's just represented in their login system somewhere.
You're never going to get your Apple shares. The only thing you're ever getting out are Canadian dollars.
Yeah, there's got to be a ledger somewhere. So it'll take you a few years, but eventually they'll be.
I don't think so.
Actually, no, you're registered. For me, I get communication from Disney.
Because you bought the share from who? Disney. You didn't buy it through TD Bank. You don't get communication like that.
You're right.
If you buy it through TD and you buy enough, you do get notices. There's a shareholder meeting. And
but you get them sent to you from TD, even if they're part of the other thing. They go through TD.
Exactly my point. And the way that I think GameStop has exposed the whole system is that I don't even think TD really has possession of your shares. There's these wholesalers, market makers.
Yeah.
Like, who has these shares?
Yeah, that I don't know because it's complicated.
So really, like, what do you have? You were just buying dollar exposure. And if there's a problem in the Canadian banking system, you're not getting your Disney shares or your Apple shares. You're just going to get your Canadian dollars out. And if they happen to hyperinflate them or devalue them to shit before you get them, you're at their mercy. That was really the lesson from the UK pension crisis.
Yeah, but that's no different than if you had the dollars anyways. Like if you had that.
Agreed. But when I can have Bitcoin that I custody, or I can have a real estate property that's in my name that I know the governments can tax and stuff, but at least I have direct ownership.
Yeah.
What do you really own? Like I know I'm painting the worst case scenario, but what do you really own when you have your Apple share on shown on your investing?
What do you really own when you see a balance in your bank account?
Agreed. I think that's kind of
you own your login to a portal.
And I know this sounds ridiculous, but I think this is the point I'm at. It's like no one owns really anything.
No, and that yeah, you're right. And that's one of the biggest things that has changed from, even as little as I don't know the exact number, maybe 50 years ago and more, but people own things. Even property, people paid off properties.
I know it sounds funny when you say it.
Well, they did. They owned it. They're like, hey, remember, there was like
the mortgage business didn't get into a big swing until like 50 years ago.
There was mortgage burning parties.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea.
Right. Like it's all changed. But yeah, ownership's not, this has happened a long time ago. No one cares about owning anything. They don't even care about the price of things. They care about what the monthly cost is. Even in the latest Apple update, did you see that? It's not out yet, but I think it's the one that comes out in September. They're going to have multiple pay built into the iOS, I believe. So like when you use Apple Pay, you can automatically split it up into 3 payments or whatever because they've partnered with some company that does that.
No way.
Yeah,
So you get payment plans like as you're buying stuff at the register.
Yeah, I don't know if it's everything you buy of certain things online or whatever, but it's going to be integrated with one of the companies that does payment plans for things. There's probably a threshold. I'm sure you can't buy something for $20 online and try to break it up into 5 payments of $4 or something. Right.
Hello, you will be a peasant for life. We've presented you these payment plans.
It's all about the money. Yeah.
No,
you just rent everything.
I think back in the day, like you could actually get your shares of a company. Like you could buy shares, and
they sent them to you. Like you got papers.
I feel like now, if you called TD and said, "Hey, I own a bunch of Apple shares. Can I actually take custody?" I think they wouldn't even know what to do with you. I think they would just say, "Well, no, let's look in your."
Well, soon it's going to be, I have a passport. Can I get it? They're like, well, yeah, you got the digital one on your phone. You're not going to that's not coming either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that just seems also inevitable. Ugh.
But it's just all going digital.
I'm going to Croatia.
Okay.
I'm going to build stone walls on the Adriatic. I want to come the rest of my life.
Okay. This will make you happy. I want to come back to this capital gains thing for a second because you explained this once and it was really good. And because I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good point. I never really thought about it like that. And so, we earn money, we get taxed on it, then we take that money and as a defensive mechanism, we invest that money into assets, right? Because you're like, I don't want to leave it in the bank account because
they forced us to take a risk.
Yeah. So then we take that risk, we own assets. And then the price of those assets, the nominal price, so the price tag on those assets goes up because of, there's multiple factors. One big one is the devaluation of the currency. That's why steaks are so high and milk's up and eggs and real estate, all these things, right? So we've done that. We try to protect our purchasing power. Now the value of that goes up. So now the government's like, because you played defense to our policies, we're now going to increase the tax on that even more. And then they tax the money that they've then printed and put into the economy that's got attracted to these assets where the value's gone up. They're just like, oh, we're going to just now take more from those pots and we're taking. That's what the capital gains tax is. And I'm like, it's kind of bonkers in a way.
It's brilliant. And then it's so brilliant on their part. And then when you have a income tax and a consumption tax, if you take $100 and you're like, I earned $100. Well, then your employer takes a chunk of that and gives it to the government before you get it. So you're left with, let's call it $70 or whatever. Then you take that $70 and you go to the store and buy stuff. And they're like, well, you're not going to get really full $70 value because part of what you're spending here for these clothes, that's tax. So you don't, you get like whatever, $57 worth or whatever it is going to be of purchasing power there. The rest is like got to tax. So the government took the income, then they take it on the consumption. Then the business that receives.
But if you didn't consume, then it gets
they
take it through inflation. But okay, so go away. Then the
business that receives the $57 net at this point, then they're taxed on the $57. So then they're taxed on that money. They pay a business income tax. What's left of that, they have to pay their employer. Their employees, actually, the employee would be a deduction expense. Okay, now, I guess I'll stop with a little explanation there. But you go on. And if that money just keeps traveling, what started at $100, the business eventually takes freaking 100% of, the government takes eventually 100% of that. And then if any individual was able to save a piece of that they didn't need to spend on consumption, to your point, they go and invest it. And if it goes up in nominal terms, then the government takes it out on capital gains tax. And then people will look around wondering why they can't get ahead.
Yeah. Someone told me that there was an idea. I was speaking with someone about capital gains tax and about this topic because it's obviously because of the change, it was popular. And I think it might've been Floyd, and he was talking, and maybe not. So I don't want to say it was him, but whoever it was saying, maybe we tax things at like two different things. So like if the price of the real estate went up just because the debasement of the currency, right? I know
sure.
Supply, demand, all this stuff. Maybe that gets taxed one way versus someone that's like, invested into a business, started a business and created something and built something. That should maybe be taxed another way because there's been work and effort put into that versus kind of just like, benefiting from the debasement of the currency, which I'm not saying that's right
I could
either.
see like somebody could say that. I think that's just a load of bananas, but sure.
Well, I think to implement that's impossible.
Well, what you're trying to do in that explanation is you're trying to centrally plan a complex system. An economy is a complex system, and you're basically saying there's a master at the top who is smart enough to figure out a dynamic, complex system, and we'll tax it this way and that way because we're going to decide which way the money flows, and it's pure bullshit.
Yeah, and
you just can't do that.
That's where that conversation went because then and I'm like, well, because he at that time, if it was Floyd, I believe, and I was saying that. Well, I think then you have definitely much more faith in the government than I do. And that's why, for me, that argument breaks down immediately.
It's not even the government at that point. It's like, who can be that smart to understand which rules you would apply to a complex system to direct the flow of money?
You can't. Well,
an economy is just best left alone. Tax is largely bullshit. Maybe there's some sort of consumption tax, but income tax on like, you're going to work and I'm going to take a part of your working labor, with the argument being, well, how are we going to pay for the hospitals? Well, there's other ways to tax. So I just feel like taxed on income and taxed on consumption and then tax on capital gains. It's just too much.
Mm-hmm. You're seeing it in the numbers, right? There's people like the capital leaving Canada is growing. Like it's growing more and more. So there's more people looking at it and be like, okay, well, this doesn't interest me anymore. I'm taking my capital and I'm going to put it elsewhere. And that's one of the reasons.
How is an entrepreneur motivated? Like, why would you build? And if you look at Canada now relative to other countries, and I'm not saying other countries in the West are really great at this moment, but it's something you have to take into account. Yeah. Why would you set up a shop here? And then so as you get productive labor and productive minds leaving this nation with their capital, what's left? And then does the tax base in that environment grow or decrease? So then if it decreases, but the debt doesn't go away, do taxes go up or down? And this is kind of my whole thing when I come back to RRSPs. I'm like, wait a second, in 15 years, you think when you take that money out of your RRSP, tax rate's not going to be higher than it is now? And then again, the argument on that would be, well, Tom, my income's lower because I'm retired. And I'm like, well, with debasement and inflation, you think your income's going to be lower?
Yeah.
You're going to need more. You're going to be in the highest tax bracket.
Yeah, but to this point, like you're talking about a country, because a lot of people might look at that and say, "Well, guys, to leave a country is a pretty big move. Like it's not that easy." But the same trends, when you have more options even within the country, the same trends can happen. So it's one thing you're seeing cost of living stuff with people going to out east and out west from Ontario. So out west being Alberta, because one reason being cost of living. But these numbers I was just looking at. Some updated numbers here, the top central cities for population loss in the U.S. over the last couple of years. So based on 2023 numbers, New York, Pennsylvania, Chicago, New Orleans, I don't know how their tax works, St. Louis, Portland, Baltimore, San Jose, Los Angeles. Most of those, the ones that I'm familiar with, which are most of them, they don't have the most favorable tax laws. And if you look at the top the top metro areas by population growth. This is a U.S. and Canada, but there's only a few in the U.S. In growth, and it's down out of the top 10.
Yeah,
Toronto's number one, by the way, by population, by hard number, not by percentage. Dallas, Houston, Pasadena, and then Orlando and Tampa. So 2 in Florida, 1 in Georgia. Atlanta's up there too. So out of the 5, 2 in Texas, 1 in Atlanta, 2 in Florida. More favorable tax laws. Like capital will leave and go to those areas. People will.
I feel like I'm watching Atlas Shrugged play out in a real time. For anyone listening who's not familiar with Atlas Shrugged, it's a fiction novel talking about how productive people just decide to opt out entirely. It feels to me like we're watching Atlas Shrugged play out in a real time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the thing is, like, the thing that's weird about this is you sound like you're negative, or I sound like I'm negative when I'm talking.
You do.
I'm not negative. But the thing is,
you are.
How can we not talk about reality? It's like, Tom, don't talk about that. You're too negative. And I want to say, well, how then do we talk about anything? Like, it's not negative. I'm just talking about reality. And if reality is currently a little bit worse than it was 10 years ago, and that sounds negative to you, grow up. Like, we're just trying to talk about things. Canada's pretty awesome on a lot of ways. We do have pretty stable banks. We do have public health care. I mean, it could all be better. The healthcare could be better. Our roads could be better. We know about our housing shortage. So it's not like I'm saying Canada sucks. I just think the trend that it's on is not good.
Yeah, I think sometimes though when you don't thread that through, then it can just be perceived as negative.
I know. I just don't have time to explain everything to everybody. Okay, but you got to figure this stuff out. But yeah, if you map out the next 10 years, I'm like, I don't know, where does this head? Government of Canada doesn't seem to want to encourage business growth. Government of Canada doesn't seem to want to encourage innovation in this country. We have some problems. Let's talk about them. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Maybe after our next election, another government gets in and things get rapidly better faster. I
was talking to a commercial lender the other day. So on this note, the last, 18 months specifically, I'd say probably the last 4 to 6 months is when people have been really starting to feel really squeezed by the economic conditions here. And I think there's probably worse yet to come. Because even with this little interest rate moves, that isn't really going to do much. Plus, it takes time, even if they do bigger moves. But I was talking to a commercial lender, and they told me it was over a $20 million a year gross business, so decent sized business, right? But they were doing business, but the receivables were just adding up, and they had seen this. This lender had seen this in multiple other businesses where there's business happening in the economy, but there's no cash flowing, because people aren't paying. So the receivables are kind of are starting to pick up and are starting to grow and add up. And this business, to kind of make it through, took $1 million loan at basically a credit card rate. It was just over 20%. And that's where they are to try to kind of bridge the gap right now. And they're like, that's not a sign.
You're sounding pretty negative, Nick.
Well, it's not a sign of a healthy economy. It's not that. I just think it's like, I think that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, Tom. I just think the tunnel's got a little bit more to go still. Yeah.
I think on the other side, there is a lot of positivity. Yeah, $1 million at 20% interest.
I didn't even do the math. I'm like, I don't want to do the math because it's a big payment. I'm like, that doesn't sound good.
Well, it's $2 million. I don't know if it's simple interest or what it is, but you're looking at $2 million or $2 million something to pay that back. Like,
oh yeah, I was thinking the monthly payment.
Yeah.
I don't know the terms. Yeah.
And then single family home permits is something we were looking at, and it's back to the level in Ontario that it was in the 1980s when the population, I don't have Canada's population, but if we're like at 40 million now, the population was a lot less then, and we're building no single family homes in the entire province of Ontario. And then the other data point, Nick, I think you pointed this out to me, is that condos are about to go through the weirdest thing because they're going to go negative and then they're going to go positive. What I mean by that is we were looking at that chart. I think it's by Urban Nation that has condo completions, and the condo completions peak in 2025 and they're still high 2026. But then by 2028, condo completions go to like 5,000 units from a peak in 2025 of like 40,000 units. So we're going to go through this weird media cycle where condos are just going to be laughed at. And there's going to be no demand, and there'll be assignment problems and closing problems, to 24 months later, no new condos being completed and our population still staying high. So it's really weird what we're going to go through just in the media.
Yeah. Yeah. If you look at the metro area, the population growth, because this blew my mind. I didn't realize it was like this. Top metro areas. This is from what is it now? Toronto Metropolitan University. It used to be Ryerson, whatever they changed that name to. And they're ending 2023 in the Toronto metro area, so GTA area, the number of people added was 221,000. The next highest in North America was Dallas at 152. It wasn't even close. We were 70,000 more. And then it goes to Houston. Montreal was up there. Vancouver was there. This is the top. Get this. This is the top 10. Toronto, Dallas, Houston, Montreal, Vancouver, Calgary, Atlanta, Edmonton, Orlando, and Tampa. Those are growth numbers for ending July 1st, 2023. But what's interesting is those numbers for Calgary and Alberta to be top 10 based on their population base. That's going to impact those cities because Calgary's added 95,000, Edmonton added 63,000. So they're feeling the impact there now for sure of this population growth. Because a lot of it was Vancouver before, then it was Toronto and Vancouver. Then it felt like Toronto really took over. Well, the numbers show Toronto really took over. And then now it's kind of spreading out into these other areas. But you're having cities of that size being the fastest growing. Metro areas, I should say. Sure. Those are metro areas.
I look at this chart from RBC, ownership costs as a percentage of median household income. And the ownership costs as a percentage of median household income in like 2010 to 2018, 19 or so was like in the 45% range, which is already pretty high. And then now it's like, looks like 62%. 62% of median household income to own a home. 62%.
So then to fix that, there's either incomes go up, prices go down, interest rates, right? Or payment terms. Mm-hmm. Payment terms change. Because if you amortize over 1,000 years, then it's, you can use less of your income. Not that
they could like just amortize 50 year, 60 year, 75 year. That fixes it.
Yeah, but so those are the fixes. So then what's the likelihood of each of those? That they want to protect the asset price. I'm not saying real estate can't go down. I'm 100% not saying that, but that if it goes down in a large sustained way, the financial repercussions in our financial system are pretty strong from a deflation of assets. Can't have anyone. I mean, Trudeau said the quiet part out loud when he came out and said that they want to protect the asset prices for retirees or whatever exactly the quote was. And then you have incomes going up. So we have seen wage growth accelerate because of inflation stuff. Companies, for good people, they've had to try to keep that going. So there has been that, but not accelerate nearly at the pace of the assets. But there's been it's been a little bit faster than it has been. Payment terms, that can change. They've already changed it now on First-time home buyers for new homes.
Up to 30-year amortization.
Yeah, so it helps. It doesn't help a ton, but it helps a little bit. You have a little bit of income bump with a little bit of that. That helps, right? Interest rates now have squeezed down a quarter point. Again, that's little. It's very likely that there's more to come based on what people are seeing in the economy. Even their numbers now are showing. I could have told them 6 months ago that the economy was. There was economists from some of the big banks screaming that the economy is slower than they think, and now it's finally starting to show. So, but
interest rates are going to come down a bit. Extended amortizations to 30, then do 35, then do 40.
I still think we're in this holding pattern, though. It's such a run up. Even though when the froth came off, we're kind of still in the holding pattern. It's not going to.
I think until the last 3 to 5 years of any currency dying, this is kind of what you see. You're in this holding pattern. Instill confidence, keep it going. Don't talk about the big points. And then the last 3 to 5 years as it all kind of crumbles down and it goes a little bit haywire. And I feel like we're getting closer to that final 3 to 5 years, but we're not just there yet. And you can kind of piecemeal this together, keep it flying. The Canadian dollar is not doing too great against the American dollar. Sacrifice these other fiat currencies. We reduced our rates. America didn't. Dollar goes down. What are we? 73 cents to American dollar or whatever we were at.
Or even that? I don't know.
Yeah,
it feels
something like that when I checked. So
I know by the times the banks and the credit cards do the conversion and it ends up on a credit card.
Sure.
It's not that.
Get 20 cents on your dollar. Yeah. So I think it's just this like slow unwind until it just goes fast and catches everybody off guard in the last little 3 to 5 year period. So I don't know when we get to that, but maybe it's, what are we, 2024? Yeah, maybe by the end of this decade, we're in that kind of phase and everyone doesn't see it coming and nobody talked about it. And then it's kind of just too late. And you're just, whoever has assets gets to keep them, has some, I don't even know, get to keep them. We talked about owning stocks. Real estate's in your name, could be taxed differently.
I mean, they could take it. It's pretty extreme.
Take it. That's pretty extreme. Bitcoin's nice. 12, 24 words in your brain.
Yeah. Or you think you own it somewhere else and they could take that too. No different
like on
stock.
An exchange or something.
Yeah, on exchange or
if you're going to leave it on
ETF or
exchange,
whatever.
Yeah, sure. I don't know. Pick up your house and give it to someone else to hold. And if you think you have it, then that's kind of on you. But yeah, I get it. So that's kind of weird. Nick, you're going to have to pick up the positive. The negative role. Negative role is my role. You're Mr. Positive.
I'm coming up with the solutions. I told you the solutions of how the housing affordability gets fixed.
Here's U.S. real disposable income growth slow. So U.S. real disposable income was growing 5% a year last year, and the U.S. consumers' real disposable income growth slowed to 1%. The reason that's a problem is U.S. consumer U.S. consumption is 70% of their GDP. So if their disposable income growth is slowing to 1%, that's really not good on a GDP that needs to grow more than 1%. Like if their GDP, if rates are, in the 5% range and their GDP is growing less than that, then you really, if their GDP is growing at 1% and real rates if inflation, what's inflation? 3%, GDP's 3%, rates are at 5%, so real rates 2%, GDP's like, if GDP's at 1%, you just can't have it. Your debt, when your debt's like 120% GDP to a small, 120% of your GDP, you can't have the debt grow faster than the economy. Mm-hmm. The math just doesn't work. So like that's going to have to change.
Yeah. You know how they were able to get rates higher here and for I don't want to say higher for longer, but it's not really
for longer than maybe we thought.
Maybe, but they got them higher too,
yeah.
Right? And it's different than other times. And do you think part of that reason is because there was so much, remember household saving rates? Because they threw so much money at people, Canada and the US both, and other countries as well, but Canada and the US, the household savings rates during that COVID period jumped. And I know a lot of people also, they were consuming. So like I know goods, toys and things like that were hard to find. When I mean toys, I mean boats and jet skis. So people used a lot of that money for that stuff. But the savings rate jumped as well. And did that savings rate allow us to kind of get to this point where they were able to kind of keep things going for as long? For sure it did. Because otherwise the money just wasn't there to support it. The economy would have felt it soon.
And now, Dave Butler was just here talking about how they're seeing mortgage applications with families that have 30,000 plus on their credit cards. So I think now...
Someone else said that they had 30, no, almost, was it 80? Remember at the team meeting this week? The line of credit was already maxed out. Mm. And then the credit card was even higher. Or you asked...
Oh, that's right. What's the most you've ever seen? And somebody had $80,000 on credit cards.
Yeah. And they thought it was... And the line of credit was already maxed. And so there was I
think you're nailing it. I think the excess savings kept everything going with these higher rates. And now some people have dipped into credit lines and unfortunately credit cards. And I think we're at the end of this game, and now they're going to start cutting rates, but that doesn't take their credit card balances down. So now the pain is going to last. So for that pain to work its way out of the system
on credit card balances, yeah, that's those ones. To pay those off when you're in that situation gets real tough.
The next 5 years is just wild, and we were talking about this with some of the VIP group. It's just now if you mix an AI into some of this. Remember I showed you on Twitter, that guy Reid Hoffman put out a AI clip where his AI bot that visually looks like him, audibly sounds like him, and then it read all his books and listened to hundreds of hours of podcasts, and he was setting up a debate between himself and his own AI that speaks like him and looks like him.
Yep.
But my question when I saw that, and remember how real it sounded? When you see that, what happens when like a bank in Canada just has a bot like that handle all its incoming phone calls? What happens to all those jobs? I don't get it. Like when a bot that sounds that good can just handle every query in real time. Like have you played with ChatGPT 4? The ChatGPT 4 now makes images. It does like complicated math in seconds. I think I was sharing this. Instead of emailing somebody on our own team to figure out some compound annual growth rates, I just typed it into ChatGPT 4 instead of typing it into an email. And ChatGPT 4 answered it all for me. And I asked it to put it in a tabular format so that I could include it in a presentation. And then it gave it to me in a tabular format.
With no idea if it was right.
No idea, but that's where we're at. But when there's more confidence, I know, but we're outsourcing our brains. So when there's more confidence to know that was right, or somebody blesses their version of AI as like we're 99% accurate on math or whatever, I don't know. What happens to all of this?
I know. I liked it at least when you could see the source, like with Google, and not that it was perfect because a lot of people just read the top thing and be like, okay, that's the truth. I'm like, well,
on math, ChatGPT 4 will show you the math they're doing and the formulas they're using. So you at least can reverse engineer what they're doing, what ChatGPT is doing. Like it does show you the formulas.
You don't know if it's pulling the right numbers though.
No, like you have to go do the research for sure. Yeah. That's what scared me because I was using it in a presentation a few hours later. But I didn't care. I just put it up there. I was just crossing my fingers, hoping that it was right. But I think that's the point we're at.
No, it is the point we're at. But it's at this point until it's like a major problem. I see, and I'm trying to teach my kids. I'm like, guys, just because something is telling you that that's the case, you got to look one level deeper. Don't just when it's something that actually matters. Like if you're looking for whatever, some random fact or something like that. Sure, okay, like for fun, it doesn't matter. But if it's something that actually matters to you, you got to go one level deeper.
Yeah, you got to do your own research. You got to go one level. And where do you go? Yeah.
Well, you go online and then you judge the sources and you decide if you're going to, but it's still an element of where you kind of put your stake in the ground and be like, okay, this source I like, I'm going to trust.
Agreed. But someone's going to just come up with a brand of AI that you're going to trust blanketly. They're going to say it's the Google AI or it's the Nick Karadza AI. And you're just like, well, I trust Nick. And if that's his AI, I trust it. I mean, that's going to happen. Yep. Humans, we're lazy. Let's face it. Humans are pretty goddamn lazy. Someone shows me a formula, shows me output. I'm like, yeah, it looks pretty good. I think I'm going to take that. But my question is on the GDP growth that needs to happen because of all this debt in the world. When GDP is like consumption and investment and, net exports, but the major influencers of GDP are labor, productivity, and capital or debt growth, however you want to say it. If the influencers of GDP, labor, productivity, and capital.
If labor is removed or a good portion of labor
is removed and productivity is just going to keep going. So it's just the people that have access to capital that are going to have power in the economy.
Productivity.
Like labor is losing all its power.
Well, if AI gets to a point that it removes that much labor, then productivity in theory actually goes up a good amount.
For sure.
Right? Because it's obviously... it's got to jump,
but forces more inflation because as productivity goes up, this is Jeff Booth's argument that productivity will just go through the roof, but you can't have goods and services coming to you cheaper because GDP has to pay for all the debt. So productivity goes up. This is where it compounds hard because as productivity goes up hard, but you need an inflationary number. So if productivity goes up where everything gets cheaper by 20%, but you need inflation at 25.
Yeah, but if you go to UBI because the jobs are lost, and the UBI and then the inflation is off, does it offset?
Well, for sure. You just printed money to make up for that productivity gain. Yeah, as long as you print enough money for the loss. If the productivity gains are 20% and you're just going to print that much money, sure. But what happens to the currency in that type of debasement? the wheel gets faster and harder because the price of burgers and steaks goes up more. So this is like the whole
But does the price of burger and steaks go up more? Well, yeah, that's food. You're talking about food. Because I was thinking about other things, because productivity is going up higher. So those things...
Sure, you get your phone a bit faster.
But those things don't go up as much because the product... So it's easier to produce a number of goods. So those prices come down. But the prices don't really come down because then they're offset on the money printing for UBI. So they stay flat. I know this is like utopian. Like,
sure.
But that's an argument too, no?
Yeah, but what happened to the purchasing power?
Food's the problem.
But what happened to the purchasing power 12 months later when you printed all the money for the UBI? You get everybody to be able to afford their food for 12 months, but 12 months later, everything's more expensive because of all the money you printed. So now you need more UBI. You can't just print an amount of money and say, okay, now it's good. The money circulates through the...
No, I'm just saying that the productivity and labor kind of level out. So as one takes on a greater role, but it only works for a period of time. Like if you have just, if you have like, great growth in productivity and labor gets dropped, it might be able to offset it for whatever. Call it a year, call two, or whatever. But then eventually that productivity, it's no different than other where we've seen other productivity really spike. It spikes, but then it kind of starts tapering off the level of it, and then you're. But then by that time you're in a really bad situation.
And I think in the Industrial Revolution, you kind of had that, but it was slower. It's like by the time you got people moving out of villages, like our family lived in a village in Croatia, to the city and into factories, there was kind of like this evolution where like our aunt was living in the city, but came back to the farm to get the eggs to sell at the market in the city. And there was like this kind of like back and forth of it. And it took decades to roll out. Whereas now, if literally tomorrow a Canadian bank says, oh my gosh, we have this bot that answers all the phone calls and answers all the questions that are not money related or just like tech support related. So all the tech support people answering the phones now have access through a bot. This bot has access to every single answer we've ever answered instantaneously. And it's smart because it's AI, can figure out other answers based on pattern recognition. All the tech support people no longer are required.
Yeah. And early on during the Industrial Revolution, it was very expensive, and it was like large companies and
capital investment
that they had that. Whereas now the productivity gains are like everyone's got it on their phone, their computer.
And one bot. If a Canadian bank buys one bot, can't that bot answer like 1 million phone calls? Whereas if you were going to replace like humans, like plowing fields with tractors, you kind of needed like a tractor for every, 10 tractors for every village or whatever. Whereas now it's just like, well, one bot could just do everything because you need compute. So basically you need computing power, you need energy, and you just need robots. And that's it. And this is why with the GDP influence,
you need people to be able to program it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so I guess I just want to bring that home.
Learn AI skills. I'm just going to go.
If labor has been losing power for 50 years, like unions have been losing power for 50 years, and now it seems like we're going to go through its exponential loss of power, it feels like. And then productivity is going to increase. And the third factor that influences GDP is capital. It seems to me that whoever controls capital going forward in any capacity has the best chance of surviving. And that's why real estate and Bitcoin seem very interesting to me, because in real estate, you get access to the capital levers of the old system. You can refinance a property, you can dip in and tackle the equity. You can sell it for some capital, get back.
Basically create money, because when you borrow against it, you're creating money, right?
Capital. So we can argue back and forth about the future and demonetization of real estate and stuff, but it has a utility value and it's directly connected into the old financial system.
Unless that system changes and they don't look at it as...
good collateral.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, geez.
I don't know.
Who's negative now?
No. I'm just trying to play out all the.
Agreed.
But I don't see like the.
I think kind of serves against them, but sure, it's a possibility.
I think but even if it was to happen, that's pretty far out. I think the probability is low, and it's a ways away.
So you have real estate, and then you have Bitcoin, purest form of capital to me, tied to energy. And then you have energy itself. So if somebody can invest in energy and knows that sector, it seems rather interesting based on everything we're saying. But Bitcoin is just a pure form of capital, unencumbered, no counterparty risk. I can, like we were talking about those Disney shares and Apple shares, I can custody it myself.
You're not going to want to ever use that as collateral with a bank, though.
Well, it'll be the best collateral ever.
But you're not going to want to.
Not going to want to.
Because then they're going to know where it is. if you had any?
Well, you can move some around. But yeah, it's the better. But yeah, like why would you? Yeah,
for some people in Bitcoin that are super about privacy and things like that.
Sure.
As soon as because you're going to want the bank's going to want proof that it's yours. There'll be some sort of system. And then now
they're going to probably want some control over it.
Yeah. And then you've kind of exposed it or whatever. Right. So that I don't know how many I guess like some people will for sure. And then I guess ultimately that will mature, that market will mature.
Yeah. Like if you need to live and you need a house for your family, I got to think that you're going to use some of your Bitcoin stack for a house for your family.
Yeah.
There's going to be some things. I mean, with the Bitcoin memes, we can all joke that everyone's going to just like have not sell any Bitcoin and live in a cardboard box. But at some point, most people are going to want some shelter over their heads. But I guess just to end off with this whole GDP thing, it just seems fascinating to me. And that maybe is like a future discussion, but it seems like we're entering the beginning innings of this now. Labor is entering its end of mass influence. Productivity is rapidly increasing. It leaves capital as the thing that you really want to have some control over for the future of your own life. To live life on your terms, you need to have some control of some capital. Whereas in the past, if you had your labor could be recognized as super valuable. Now it's hard. Like, what do you pick as the labor to focus on your own skill set? I guess unless you go into just like plumbing or...
I was going to say it's a trade.
A trade, like if you go there...
It's almost like come full circle, whereas in our society, we kind of, for a period of time, we kind of look down on the trades like, you're a
drywaller?
Plumber. Yeah.
You're a taper?
You're like, you didn't go to university and take a master's degree in
engineering,
artistic dance, or whatever it was. Right. So no, engineering. And we need engineers. We need engineers. I
don't know. ChatGPT pretty soon. I don't know. Maybe build me a bridge.
But it seems like the trades, because then in that world, you still need those people.
Yeah.
Even more valuable now that with where energy. I mean, maybe it's an electrician. Because just energy
feels like, I mean, someone was showing me data that like every AI request that we make into ChatGPT is way more energy intensive than what Bitcoin is.
I saw that chart. Oh, sorry. I thought you meant in a Google search.
Oh, I was talking about a Bitcoin transaction, but yeah, Google search.
Yeah. I said like the amount of energy one ChatGPT request versus a Google search. And it was like, it's multiples.
Yeah.
Right, on the ChatGPT.
I even noticed on my phone with ChatGPT 4, which probably exposed my phone to who knows who by putting that thing on there. But doing a query that was, I guess, for it complex, it kind of hung on my iPhone. And I can't remember the last time I've had an app like kind of freeze up my phone.
Well, they're integrating it. They're not calling it ChatGPT, but my understanding is Apple has a partnership with OpenAI, and the new version of Siri, whatever they're calling it, they changed the name, is powered by their version of ChatGPT.
Yesterday, ChatGPT, they're changing the name of Siri?
It's not changing by like it's instead of Siri, it's like the Siri experience, or it's like some random thing, but it's with OpenAI. Like that's what's powering it. Mm-hmm. Even though they're not calling it that, so, they're basically white labeling.
So AI is instantly good. Basically, when they turn that on, everybody upgrades and AI knows everything about everybody.
I just don't know what it's going to be able to do. Anyways, it's there. There's some details there. It's worth, I just glanced at it, but it's worth kind of.
Can you imagine it goes through your videos and says, Nick, that squat that you were doing, really, that you thought you can.
No rep.
It really wasn't. It was a no rep. Your AI friend, I'm calling a no rep on that video from 3 weeks ago that we found in your photo archive.
Yeah. Yeah. I was talking to someone else that sold his, someone yesterday that sold his, had a tech business, has sold it, kind of plays in the crypto space, not just Bitcoin, but in different elements of that, a few other things. And we were just talking about like 5 years from now, so he's in this world, he's deeper into
so what did he say?
Crypto world, and he's just like, I can't even, no idea.
Who can figure it out?
No. Again, he's just like, like people. And people don't see it coming because I'm like, do you think people?
Because everyone's busy working, paying for their bills today.
They don't see it coming, and it's going to hit hard.
When you hit black ice and the car is like spinning. Have you ever hit black ice in the car and you're spinning?
Yeah, you're just completely out of control.
One time I hit black ice on Dixie, just north of Burnthorpe in Mississauga, and there's a little downhill and across Rockwood Mall there, and I started spinning out. This is my old Thunderbird, and somehow the last spin I ended up facing forward, and I just drove right out of it. It was like 2 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, I've just hit it trying to brake, and I'm just sliding, and you just don't stand it. You have no chance.
I feel like that's how we're all kind of spinning right now. Not only is the earth spinning, but the economy is like spinning on black ice, and we haven't hit that guardrail. but like we're all spinning and the guardrail's getting closer.
But you got to prepare because it's happening so fast. If you're don't have this in your mind and you're kind of looking for it, this is what we were talking about yesterday as well. It's like, then you get completely blindsided by it. And you're like, and then you're playing catch up, and it's so hard to play catch up because things move so fast. And even though it's going so fast, as long as you have your eyes open to it, it's still going to be an adjustment, and people are going to have to learn how to adjust and how to use and interact with artificial intelligence. Like, it's coming. There's no doubt. So that's going to have to happen. But if
you're going to yell at it,
if you start now, just like I yell at everything now. But if you start now, then you get, that change becomes easier. Right. It's like if you went from not using a cell phone at all to using an iPhone, and that's versus the multiple iterations.
And honestly, that's why I'm a worst case scenario planner in real estate and everything. That's why I don't feel like when I talk about this stuff, it's negative about nation states, the world, the Canadian economy, anything.
No, you're just trying to figure it out.
I'm just trying to figure it out. And then once I figured it out,
I come across.
No, I know.
I'm trying to help you as your little brother.
I'm trying to explain to you that I know I do, but there's nothing you can do about it. If you want to have real conversations, let's talk about the real things. Otherwise, it's just like, what are the Blue Jays doing? I don't want to talk about the Blue Jays. Who cares?
Yeah, no.
I guess some people care about the Blue Jays. I know Todd cares about the Blue Jays, but I think that's just where we're at. That you have to pay attention to it. Yeah, there was something else I was going to say on the whole thing. Oh yeah, imagine this: when AI comes out and starts earning capital, and then it just starts using that capital it earns autonomously somehow to buy an apartment building, and AI becomes your landlord that you pay rent to. And then if you don't pay rent, AI can hire the sheriff. It can go to the tenant board and then hire the sheriff to evict you.
But it doesn't seem completely out of the realm of possibility. Because if you think so much is digital, right? So you can go online, start a corp. Then you take that corp, if you get access to some capital, you buy the place. Right, you can do that, and then you just hire someone to rent it out. Like
hire a property manager.
Yeah,
property manager just over email doesn't know you're not a human.
You can. It's like really not that hard. Yeah,
and then we're all renting out from the AI, and then the AI doesn't like you, and it evicts you, and then where do you go? I know. That's, you know what it is.
It's a log cabin. I'm building a log cabin in the woods right now. You don't know where it is. I'm not even telling you.
I'll find you.
I'll decide if I share the coordinates.
I'm going to find. The bottom line is, I think this goes back to how we started this whole conversation about like working out. I think everybody in an area, like a nation, we all have to go through a period of suffering. It's like we had all this time.
You love that word.
I know, love it. I'm going to get a t-shirt saying we have to suffer. And you know why we have to suffer? Because
there's been suffer, you son of a bitch.
Or what about just suffering is good? What about suffering is good? Suffering for the win. We must suffer.
Pain is weakness leaving the body.
I think I saw because there's been no suffering, we now have to pay for all these ramifications. But every once in a while, you just can't have everything. Whereas in democracy, all the politicians that go into power always promise everything, and you just can't have everything. So we will find someone to go into politics that runs on this platform. You will suffer and you will like it. They will get no votes.
You start running, see how it goes.
You will suffer and you will like it. 0 votes. We can say we tried it. Yeah, the name of the party will be Suffering or Us. Hey, you want to come over here and suffer with us?
That's an uphill battle.
And you know what we'll do at the rallies? We'll all do burpees. Because then you're going to suffer physically, and then we're going to suffer financially, because we're going to say, you can't have everything. We have to save. Yeah. So because nobody wants to suffer, we're on this path. Let's see where it leads. Good times ahead. Positive times ahead.
Hey, there's a solution. You presented a solution.
Yeah.
You know,
a little bit of suffering goes a long way. Maybe that's what it is. A little bit of suffering goes a long way. How are we wrapping this episode?
At this point, I don't know.
We're going to suffer to
I guess in short, it's just like, hey, this is kind of for us, at least, that's what we're paying attention to. Yeah. Right. This AI trend is going to be, well, look, we're in this real estate world, whether it's the brokerage, investing, whatever. And we're not pretending that it's just going to stay the same. And I think for anyone, we're all best served if we realize that things are not going to stay the same. They're going to change, and they'll probably change faster. So it's just kind of keep your eyes open to whatever opportunities exist for you. Because like if we were just sitting here, I'm looking at the real estate industry and the way the boards work and stuff like that. It's a little bit of an antiquated system, right? And because of licensing and and regulations, they're able to hold on. But I mean, there's a number of things coming that are always trying to disrupt that industry. Mm-hmm. So no matter what industry you're in, what job you have, whatever it is, things are coming to disrupt it, and you might as well keep your eyes open for it. And on the other side, if it interests you, like to me, it's interesting. So I actually like understanding that. It's a little bit of shiny object syndrome with the new toys, but I like understanding what's going on. So, but I think it's worthwhile.
And on the other side of the disruption, I think there's great things.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Like I think this.
There's always there's good and bad to everything. I'm a firm believer of that, and there's always opportunity out there for people that want it. Sometimes it's like, I'm good. I got what I need, and that's no problem. And I don't mean that just financially. I just mean your life is set up the way you want your life set up. Great. Some people want more. Some people want to be doing something different. So yeah, whatever works for them.
Cool. I'm going to go away now and work on my deadlift so that I can impress my little brother with more than 75 pounds on a deadlift.
No, bench press. Work on your bench press.
Okay, got it. Hey, thanks for tuning in. You can find every new episode of the Your Life, Your Term show on all the major streaming platforms. So Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. And if you'd like to get free copies of some of the books that we've put together, like these right here, or some of the reports that we've put together, like these right here, you can find all of those at www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's it for now. Until next time, your life, your terms.